I always get nervous when people say I live with my high school sweetheart and my wife. I'm afraid they think I'm a polygamist. We got to mix that up somehow. Look, I want to thank Steve Meggerly for inviting me here tonight and the sponsors of the Bluegrass Institute. Before I ever got involved in politics, I knew what the Bluegrass Institute was and was getting the newsletters and whatnot. And I want to congratulate Lloyd Rogers. Before I met Lloyd Rogers, two people tried to describe him to me. And I want to tell you how they described him. One of them was Brett Gaspard. And he said, Lloyd is into politics, and you got to understand one thing. Nobody has ever won a battle against Lloyd. And I said, you mean he won every election he ever got involved in? He said, no, that's not what I mean. Even the ones that beat him wish they'd never got involved. So then John Kemper tried to describe Lloyd Rogers to me before I met him. He said, you know how you eat an elephant? I said, yeah, one bite at a time. He said, Lloyd Rogers has eaten 2 or 3 elephants in his life. And Lloyd is just an amazing individual, and we're proud to have him as my Director of Veterans Affairs. And he does a great job there. He's got an interest and has always had an interest in cracking down on the overburdensome regulation of the government, whether it's local, state, or the federal government. We had in my science committee Gina McCarthy, who was the head of the EPA, and she never saw a regulation she didn't like. It's not just about coal. She wanted to get into every aspect of your lives. In fact, before I walked into the meeting, I found out they were promulgating some regulations on wood stoves, on your fireplace, on your boilers in your house, which is a big deal in Kentucky. A lot of people heat with wood. And I guess the government would rather you take heating assistance than to go some kind of government check than to go cut your own wood. So anyways, I had her in there, and I asked her about these regulations. I said, is it true you're looking at regulating these wood boilers? And she said, yes, it is. And I said, but it says on here that you were only going to regulate the manufacture of new wood boilers. And she said, that's true, that's our intent. I said, so can you promise me today, if we like the wood boiler we have, we can keep it, period? I swear I said that. Sometimes I say things I shouldn't say, but I say what I think. I commit candor occasionally. The other day, I'm trying to, actually, and that's, the other thing I need to take out of my bio is that I went to MIT, now that we know Jonathan Gruber teaches there. My only defense is to remind everybody that the Unabomber went to Harvard. So it could be worse. Following that line of saying, we have these freshmen that are coming in, and it's really important to me to give them good advice. Freshman congressmen, the folks that you fought so hard to get elected all over the country. And you worked so hard to get them there, we got to make sure they don't, fall off the wagon, become zombies, drink the water, get Potomac fever. And so I was sitting next to Dave Bratt. This is the gentleman that beat Eric Cantor in a primary. And you can bet I'm in his office every morning. And so we were sitting next to each other when we had our conference vote for Speaker of the House. Now there are 2 votes that happen. Each, the Republicans go off and have an election, and that's our unofficial candidate, but on January 6th, it's not official who the Speaker of the House is until we vote in person in the full House. But we had our unofficial, or our primary election, if you will, and Dave Bratt was sitting there. There was only, John Boehner was the only one running, because the committee chairman, he appoints them 3 days later after his race. So Dave Bratt sitting next to me. He said, I told people I would not vote for John Boehner, and I didn't have a chance to vote for anybody else. What am I going to say when I walk out of here? I said, just keep your mouth shut, because there's a gaggle of reporters out there, and they all want you to say something, and they're trying to get you to say something stupid. I said, Dave, don't say anything. Walk by him, say no comment, no comment, no comment. Well, an hour later, I walked out of the room, and I said no comment to the first 2 reporters. Then I forgot what I told Dave Bratt. And the reporter for USA Today said, what do you make of the unanimous re-election of John Boehner? And I said, of course it was unanimous. There was only one candidate on the ballot. It's just like North Korea. And I immediately regretted saying that. Because I realized she writes for the Cincinnati Enquirer, which is in his district. So I'm thinking, oh, you know, a miracle could happen and they wouldn't print that. Well, they made it the headline in the Cincinnati. And in USA Today, it was the last sentence in the article. So much for giving advice to the freshmen. You know, I should take my own advice. The toughest part about this is I fly on the airplane with Boehner's chief of staff every week. And I had to get on the plane the same day that article came out. And I thought about switching to US Air from Delta, because I know how to fly Delta. But I thought, no, I can avoid it. I'll avoid eye contact. Hopefully we won't be seated next to each other. So I walked to the airport, and there's Senator Rob Portman talking to Boehner's chief of staff. And Portman calls me over. He wanted to talk to me. He heard good things about me from my district. And eventually I had to make eye contact with the Speaker's chief of staff. And I thought, you know, thought beyond hope. Maybe he's not seen the article, you know. Maybe through some miracle, Boehner didn't see that quote. And maybe his staff didn't read it. So I thought, how are we going to ease into this? So I said, Brian, it's going to get harder and harder to take this flight, isn't it? And I just left it at that, thinking, we'll see if he's read it or not. And he said, well, Massie, it's not like we're flying to North Korea. Nailed. I was nailed. So hopefully these freshmen will take my advice and do as I say, not as I do. You know, we had a big victory in the Senate, obviously, and we've had 300 bills that passed in the House since I've been elected. Most of them are good bills, and they've all died in the Senate. Harry Reid won't even bring them up for a vote. He's not even brought up the appropriations bills. I mean, we got blamed for a shutdown, but he didn't debate or pass or bring up for a vote a single appropriations bill. But somehow we got blamed for the shutdown. So I'm looking forward to being there and having Mitch McConnell in the, as he says, in the offensive coordinator position instead of the defensive coordinator position. I think we can score some points that way. And when you're watching this going along, I think there's 3 types of bills we can pass in the next Congress. They're the messaging bills. And don't get these confused with the real bills, because they're not going to pass. The president will veto them. But it's worth doing to show people where we stand. So we can repeal Obamacare. We can do that. And that's worth doing to show people what we would do if we had our man in the White House. But we know he's going to veto that. So it's not, don't spend too much time on that. That's not why I went to Washington to pass messaging bills. For heaven's sakes, people know what we need to do. All right, so but the second type of bill that we could pass is what I call chess moves. You make him vote. These are things that some of his constituents want, and most of America realizes is the right thing to do. When he was in the Senate, he never had to vote. He voted present most of the time. And as president, he's never had to veto any bill of any consequence, because his party's always been in power, and Harry Reid has protected him from vetoing anything. So let's send him stuff. You know, I'm glad we had the Keystone vote. I'm actually glad it failed by 1 vote in the Senate, because the first bill we should bring up in the Senate is the Keystone vote. And then send that to the president and make him decide, do I want to kill jobs? Do I want to upset the union? Or do I want to placate the environmental extremists? And so those are the kinds of, one of the bills I would love to send, and one of those chess moves is, if you like your plan, you can keep it. Because, you know, he's saying, well, you know, they want us to work together now, that's why they put you all in charge. So let's help him out with that promise. Now, I'm not sure how you would write the bill, but you could write a bill that allows insurance companies to offer other plans, or a bill that keeps from penalizing you for not having the Obamacare type plan. And that would chip away at it. And I think Democrats would vote for it in the House, and I think Democrats would vote for it in the Senate. It'd be a very interesting bill to watch him veto. And maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he takes us up on our offer to help him out. That's a chess move. The third type of bill that we can pass is to attach legislation to the budget, to the funding. That ultimately, at the end of the day, the power of the purse is what we have in Congress. That's what we hold. That's our strongest constitutional card. And I don't think you should overplay that card, though. I don't think you can defund Obamacare with that. It's not going to work. He's shown us he'll shut the government down and get blamed for it. But attached, it's like Lloyd Rogers. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? I'd love to send him a bill that funds the government for 6 months that cuts the EPA by 20%, foreign aid by 20%. Give him everything else he wants and see if he will try to shut the government down over that. It'll be different than it was a year ago, September, because this bill will actually be on his desk. And if he does nothing, it becomes law. And the government's funded. So it has to take a positive action for him to shut down the government. I think that's what we could do. So those are the 3 types of bills we could pass. But first we've got to get through the lame duck. And we've got 1 more week of the lame duck, and I'm worried. To use an analogy, I'm using a lot of animals here, lame duck, but Pat Buchanan, he wrote this in an article. He says, sometimes you just got to hunker down like a mule in a hailstorm. And that will be my posture next week. Because Harry Reid is still in charge in the Senate. And I don't know why we're giving him another bite at the apple. But why would we reward him with passing a year-long budget that was designed with his priorities in mind? It's pre-negotiated with him. I think we should pass a 2-month continuing resolution, get us to January or February when the reinforcements arrive. We're going to have a better House and we're going to have the majority in the Senate. And that's what we should be doing. It makes no sense whatsoever to fund the government for a full year with Democrat priorities here with 2 weeks left on December 11th, 2 weeks left in the year. So we've got to get through this lame duck. And I can tell you, I got a text while I was sitting here about the bills we're going to vote on next week. There were 5 post office renamings, 3 courthouses need to be named, 1 highway needs to be named, and 2 outpatient clinics for the VA need to be renamed. And that's what our leadership's telling us is going to occupy the majority of our time next week. Now, and there's links to all those bills, you can read them. But there is no link to a bill to fund the government. And this is what's so irresponsible. This week, we had a bill come out on our website talk about transparency. This is not transparency. At 10:43 p.m. on Tuesday, a bill showed up on an obscure link on a website that's 1,648 pages for the National Defense Authorization Act. There's some important critical stuff in that bill, and that's how they motivated everybody to pass the junk that they added to it. I'm all for giving more land back to the states and the counties from the federal government. The federal government has too much land, but there's a provision in there that does a no-bid transfer to a foreign country for copper rights in Arizona. And there's no bid on it. We're just going to sell it to them. And that's the kind of stuff that's stuck in the National Defense Authorization Act that they hide in there. Anyways, that was 1,648 pages. It came out at 10:45 Tuesday. Most people didn't find it until Wednesday. My staff's looking over the website trying to find where they hid it. Finally, we find it Wednesday morning, and we had to vote for it yesterday. And that's the kind of transparency we don't need in the House or in the Senate, for that matter. But one thing that will help you understand as you watch Congress, this was the hardest thing for me to realize and to internalize, is that it doesn't seem like it's doing what you would think it would do with Republicans in charge. But what you have to understand is conservatives are in the minority. They're not in the majority. It takes 218 votes to pass anything. And so even though I give the Speaker a lot of grief, his job is a tough one. There aren't 218 conservatives yet in the House of Representatives. And so that will help you, I think, when you watch what goes on. And you say, why don't they just defund it? Why don't they stand strong? Because at the end of the day, there are 30 Republicans that will vote with 200 Democrats and pass anything. And so that's the tough battle that we're fighting there. Here's the good news. We've got, there are 40 freshman Republicans showing up. 18 of them, I would say, are true conservatives. I would say probably at least 6 of them will join our Liberty Caucus. Most of these caucuses in Congress do not meet. There's like Concrete Ready Mix Association Caucus. There's the Aviation Caucus. I'm sure Damon knows, I'm sure you have the equivalent at the state level. And your constituents are like, why aren't you on, the whatever it is, the diabetes caucus? Well, maybe because they've never met. Maybe that's why I'm not on. But the reason I'm telling you that is we have something called the Liberty Caucus in Congress that meets every 2 weeks, every Thursday, every 2 weeks. And it is growing. This is the success that we're having. And everybody watched the Senate primaries, but not too many people were reporting on the House primaries. And we picked up a lot of good people that are going to be amazing when they get to Washington, D.C. And so that's what I'm excited about. That's what I'll be spending time in their offices. And I think we're going to get good stuff done. Those 300 bills, one of those 300 bills that passed the House and went to the Senate and was thrown in Harry Reid's trash can was the REINS Act. And I am very, very confident that we're going to get a vote on that in the Senate, given who the majority leader is. That's one of those chess moves. Put that on the president's desk. Now, he will probably veto it, unfortunately. But it's got a chance, and so we should do it. There are a lot of well-behaved children here. I want to leave you with a quick story about my daughter. This happened a year ago, and some of you have heard this, but I brought all my staff from D.C. to my farm a year ago. Because one of the problems with D.C. is there's a disconnect between Washington, D.C. and Kentucky, because the people up there don't know about the people back here. And there's even a schism between a lot of staffs. So we had an off-site retreat. We did it on my farm. My wife wanted to kill me. She said, where are they all going to sleep? I said, we'll kick the kids out of their bedrooms. They can sleep in their bunk beds. It'll all be good. My little daughter heard this, my 9-year-old. And she came out of the shadows. She was eavesdropping, kind of like the NSA. I'm used to having all my calls recorded anyway. And she comes out of the shadows and she said, Dad, are you letting those strangers from Washington, D.C. sleep in my bed? And I said, I'm sorry, honey. It'd be just like camping. We'll put sleeping bags in the living room. She said, but Dad, you're letting government get in my bedroom. That's not even a Republican talking point. So I have no idea where she heard that. But anyways, again, thank you, Steve Megerly, for inviting me tonight. Thank you, Jim, for all you do. Congratulations, Damon and Jim, for your award. Well deserved. Thank you for bringing some transparency. We'd love to have more of that in Washington, D.C. And good night.
Thank you, Congressman Massie, and another miracle has occurred tonight. We're right on time. Thank you, though, for that. And, it's easy to get discouraged by a lot of things, but I think that was pretty encouraging tonight. That we have some folks down in Washington that haven't allowed Washington to change them. Instead, they've gone to change Washington. And wouldn't it be great someday maybe to even have a speaker, Thomas Massie? Awesome. Yeah. Wouldn't that be great?